Okay. Ex
Well, hello
Excellent.
everyone. Welcome to another
Hi.
edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting. And on the program, we welcome to the show. This has been an interview I've been wanting to do for a long time. We welcome Paul Salvatori, a journalist who
Thank
produces interviews, documentaries, short history videos for TRT. TRT is a Turkish-funded news outlet that broadcasts in English and like Al Jazeera English and AJ Plus, like RT, Press TV, and CGTN. It's primarily directed at a left leaning audience, and Paul mainly focuses on Israel and historic Palestine. So, this is another one of our all things Israel and historic Palestine episodes. And let's get into it. But before we do that, please share widely one plus one across your social media. Help us overcome the far right algorithms and monopoly Western corporate media and state media and still leftist website. Having a social media world by sharing us widely. And Facebook blocks me sometimes from sharing, so it's very important that people share widely. And also, do help my friend Chris Richards, the eclectic radical, by becoming a Patreon to his show. Trust me, folks, it's money well spent and invested. Chris is facing unemployment and needs money to continue doing his programs. And you can give up the Spotify because YouTube has all the free music, anyways. And you can also give up Amazon and Disney Prime. So, so please help a
you.
comrade out. And now let's get on to the topic at hand. First off, Paul, welcome to the
Hi.
program. It's been a long
Thank you
time
so
coming.
much. Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, it's a real honor.
Yes.
Yes, it's a real honor to have you on, Paul. And first question, because
Right.
first question I want to ask you, since we are going to be mostly focusing on Israel, historic Palestine, is just in general your reflections, your thoughts on the past 2 to 3 years of Israel's live stream genocide of Gaza, the unbelievable impunity that Israel has gone away with. It's helped topple the Syrian Arab Republic. It's brutal attacks on Lebanon, twice attacking Iran with the U.S.'s blessing, and just no allies of Israel putting a brake on how out of control this sociopathic entity is. What's your thoughts on so what's your thoughts on all this?
Right.
Because you've primarily been covering historic Palestine and Israel, and yeah. So in general, what's
Yes.
your thoughts? And also, quick follow up question would be, which is, what's been your response also to the avalanche of compassion demonstrations and actions that have been taking place against Israel and its various crimes against humanity?
Yes, no, thank you. Where to start? That's such a wonderful question, a good question. I think, I mean, the first word that comes to mind when you're asking the first question is unhinged. And not that it was not unhinged before October 7th, but I think it's now just escalated to a point that I just personally would never have imagined. But of course, I'm speaking as a non-historian.
Yeah,
And it's it's just something I feel, and maybe this is partly informed by my educational background, philosophy. I feel like we're at a point that the language of politics and law alone just does not capture the scale of evil. It's just sheer evil. It's been, I think I've used this term before in some of my posts, just metaphysically destabilizing to the point where it's hard to fathom that there's a moral order in this universe. If this is allowed to have, like I remember early on, we were questioning, the world was questioning, where is the rules-based order? This live stream genocide is happening before our eyes. It's unprecedented in terms of how it's being live streamed. And we're all kind of being vicariously traumatized on top of that. I mean, we
yeah,
are not the primary victims. Palestinians are surely, but we're being vicariously traumatized, and nobody's doing anything substantial to hold the perpetrators accountable at all. I mean, really at all. Canada hasn't sanctioned. So there was that, but now we're at a scale, we're at a level where we're seeing. And then we began to see the famines, the kicking out of all the nonprofits, all the humanitarian aid, and still nothing. So, you're seeing babies starve to death, freezing to death. This is all happening. And so, like, now it's not just about the rule-based order, it's about, like, what is humanity really about? And so I just feel like this moment is surreal, but in a very negative way. I think at the same time, maybe the silver lining, if I could use that, is that it's emboldened me personally to do more, to be less hesitant about, like, how do I put it? Being not
Ah,
diplomatic, you know.
yes.
I think that's something new for me because I think just being trained in philosophy, you're just taught to be reflective and not act, to be contemplative and not act. And when you act, you should be very deliberative. But I feel that there is an exception here. Like, I feel this, what we're seeing is the exception. Like, I try and be that way as much as I can in all aspects of my life. But what we're seeing right now, there is no room for that kind of deliberative process just because it's so glaringly obvious. So I attend the demonstrations, I sign petitions, I am doing now some legal observation and solidarity work with Palestinians here, or Palestinian solidarity activists in Toronto who are being charged for doing things they didn't do. You know, for example, one friend is now facing sentencing next week for stealing a flag that she didn't steal. And it's all part of the Zionist kind of repression that's happening within the Canadian establishment. And so I'm doing this in a way that I'm less, if I ever was, apologetic about. Like, I'm very strained. I guess what I'm saying is that there's a redemptive moment that's going to come. I don't think that's going to happen in our lifetime. Like, I don't think that the establishment or somehow, this is the thing that I should mention, that what's shocking to me is, and I don't think that they're the only group in history, obviously. What's shocking to me is that those who've been supporting Israel, the pro-Israeli side,
Yeah.
has shown, I know I may be stating the obvious, they've shown absolutely no remorse. Does that make sense? Like, they've shown no
Oh
remorse.
no,
They've asked for
I
no
completely where you're coming
forgiveness,
from.
and this is like like, how can you be this way? Like, it was bad enough you're supporting a genocide, and we're now almost 3 years into it, and you've shown absolutely no shame. And I think that is getting people even angrier, and that's emboldening people more. And that to me is just, again, I have to use the word surreal. So I think that's just emboldened me to do more without fear, whatever the consequences, being, I guess, less strategic in a way without being reckless, just doing what's right, doing solidarity work that's right, and not worrying about what happens. Like, I need to know that to sort of go to my graves, so to speak. Like, I need to know that I did everything I could in this time. So that's it. And I think to your second question, sorry, remind me again
About
because
and
yeah,
what has sort of impressed you? So of course
right,
of course there's the disturbing thing of seeing
right,
because I know completely what you're you know what you're talking about.
right,
I like for me looking at the National Post and some of their headlines, some of their op-ed pieces, or looking or occasionally listening to snippets of Bill Maher, these
right,
guys justifying what Israel is doing. I just think for me, like what I just feel like screaming at them, like, dude, like
right.
where is your decency? Like, even if you are a
Yes,
supporter of Israel, come the f on.
right.
This is like
Yes.
so.
Oh, yes.
And I think like you, I've also noticed that many people because I think like I've grown up, my whole life. I've had friends from Israel. My family has had friends from Israel, and and usually there's always this rule. It's like okay, you can support the Palestinians, but you have to be very quiet about it. You have to sort of like walk on eggshells. It's a topic that you just do not approach with your Israeli friends because they're all patriotic and so forth. And I think while some people may still do that, I think in general, everyone I think has just I think everyone is just actually like fed up with walking on eggshells when it comes to Israel and giving Israel
Right.
this this impunity that Israel has been allowed to have. So I see much more people much more fearless in speaking out on Israel, and not even and people sort of less afraid of the usual you're an anti-Semite or the tone policing and so forth. So
Right, right. Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, to your second question and related to what you're saying, I think what's impressed me, I think has impressed a lot of people, is the amazing groundswell of international support for
yeah,
Palestine, the solidarity. Before October 7th, I think there was always this suspicion as to why you're involved. Like people would ask me, like, is he hateful towards Israel? Like, why? But I mean, I remember that, but it was really just, through conversations that I was having with Palestinian friends or friends from the region, also saying 2021 was very important to me because, I saw Canada supporting Ukraine and they didn't send one gun or bullet to the resistance. And like, what are you doing? And here they are talking about the two-state solution. But anyway, um, I remember that certain people who were kind of like trying to do the let's hear both sides have shifted, have totally gone this anti-Zionist way that I would never have been predicted. And I remember telling
they've
someone,
become radicals
former,
overnight.
right, right. It really feels this way. Like the people that were not thinking about it or didn't really understand what Israel was doing to Gaza, or that there was an open air prison in Gaza. They are very familiar, and they're getting interested now in the history. It's opening a whole, it's a Pandora's box, or it's opened a whole Pandora's box, and people are becoming very interested. There's the activist piece, there's the advocacy piece, but I think people are now interrogating what this state is really about. When did it start? Is it really the democracy, that whole thing, the democracy in the Middle East that
The
we were
only
taught?
democracy
Like,
in the Middle East. Yeah,
yes. And what's also interesting too, I'm not sure what to think of it. It's brought, like as you're saying, like, there's the Tucker Carlson, there's that media, the Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, the right and the left are coming together to create this anti-Zionist discourse. This I would
exactly.
never have predicted. This is very interesting to me, and um, hopefully could be mobilized to dismantle, the apartheid state. I'm hoping that is where it's going, and it's not just about just talking, but I'm yet to see that. But I'm quite surprised. I never thought I would have seen that because they seem to be quite the right was very pro, and I think that obviously there still is that segment. They were pro-Israeli, but people on the right, quite a few have moved away from that.
Yeah,
So that is that. And I just wanted to mention that I remember telling a colleague in the newsroom when I was working at TRT that it was very sad because I felt like it shouldn't have come to this
yeah,
like that because Palestinians have been telling us, have been protesting for so long. There was the Great March of Return and all the solidarity work worldwide. Like this has
yeah,
been going on for so long. Why did it have to come to this? But I was frightened. I remember I was in my apartment in Istanbul when that happened, October 7th, when the resistance took action. Like I was very afraid because I knew, but not to the scale. I knew Israel would act in a totally reckless way, but not to this scale. I remember thinking that to myself. Um, and it's just gone far beyond that. So
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I know for a fact, if I think if not for the avalanche of solidarity and demonstrations from seeing so many Jewish anti-Zionist voices coming out saying on my name
right.
from the Orthodox to the secular to everything in between. Seeing so many, I have friends in Australia, friends in Perth, and seeing so many Aboriginal people, come
Yeah,
out
yes,
saying that
yes,
Palestine's fight is our fight. In the U.S., there's been over a dozen of Native Americans coming out. Just as in
yes,
Canada, there's been lots of Indigenous people,
yes.
Black people, and so forth. In New Zealand, I think
Hmm.
all the communities, from the immigrants to the Maori community, and in the northern
Yes.
countries, you've been having in European countries, you've been having the Roma, Sinti people. the Nordic people, you've been having lots of lots of the people, the Sami people, all just coming out in this wonderful yeah, just an avalanche of compassion,
Right.
solidarity, which I've been quite impressed with. And but then
Yes.
but then I have to ask this question. I didn't prepare this question,
Right.
but I do have to ask this question. So you were saying that you would have never thought that Israel would have taken its evil to a whole nother
Yes.
level, which it has.
Yes.
So when we talk about October the 7th, do you does part? I mean, we know why the Palestinians had to do
Right.
what they did on October the 7th. It was an act. It was an act of rebellion. It was an act of breaking out of that open air prison, which is Gaza.
Mm.
But the fact that Israel has been so genocidal. Does a part of you feel that that the Palestinian resistance shouldn't have done that given Israel's response, or there or it doesn't matter? The Palestinians are it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I'm very curious to respond.
It's a really good question because I think one can't help but ask, like, did Hamas or did the resistance, let's say, no? But I think I kind of defer to Norman Finkelstein on this question. And he said at some point, and I can send you the clip, which is that they had no choice. You know, they at a certain moment, this is where I think like we need to understand like causality. It's like I hope that the world, and I think, yes, like especially among the solidarity community, you are seeing this recognition that it doesn't matter like who you are. If you are contained within this prison under these conditions for years, it's going to happen. It's a it's going to happen in some ways. And I've said this, and I have no problem saying it again. I think it's a miracle. Like it took that, like the restraint. Like, if I'm to think of like what human beings do when they're under much less restraint, it's a miracle that it didn't happen earlier. Really, like I thought this to myself, and this is just like I think again, Finkelstein talks about this too. Like they tried with the Great March of Return. They tried so many different things, all kinds of nonviolent resistance. They tried. And if you're a person that's serious about, or a group of people who are serious about self-determination, as the Palestinian people are, and living with dignity, then there's a point you just cannot just do nothing. And
Exactly.
so that is something like. I feel that they were compelled to do. I don't know. Like, I cannot speak for the resistance. Obviously, I don't know how much they anticipated. Like, I'd just be speculating. But um, it's
But th-
it's clear that yeah,
but then
yeah,
but then what's your response to I mean, I think I believe it was Seymour Hersh that said this, but and
okay,
Alex Gibney has suggested this in his documentary about Netanyahu, the BB Files about Netanyahu's
right.
various scandals and legal challenges, and it ends with the genocide in Gaza. And basically, there's a thesis that Gibney and Hersh and many others have, which is the following: that Netanyahu, because of all of these, corruption scandals that he was having, and because he was lucky to have, gotten that far right coalition that he got, but because of all of those humongous protests against the very unpopular judicial reforms, him and his coalition weakening the judicial system, the Supreme Court, and many people, mainly of the women, feminist community and queer community were very afraid that they were going to start repealing very progressive
Mhm.
laws, and that basically Netanyahu and the intelligence of Israel allowed October the 7th to happen so that they could distract the large Zionist population and have this war because nothing unites Israelis more than hatred for the Palestinians and wars overseas. What do you think of that thesis?
Well, like I see, I wouldn't put it past him to do that. I really wouldn't put it past Netanyahu to do that in the way that Trump is doing what he's doing right now. I think that this is something I learned since October 7th. Like I perhaps I'm naive, but like I thought there were moral limitations even to people who are pathologically violent and in power. But no, There are leaders who will do that to win an election, to win the favor of the public. This is very plausible. I'm seeing it this way. I remember once being I went to, I wrote for the Palestine Chronicle this
Yeah,
piece. I went to a talk, and I don't think they knew really who I was because maybe they would have asked me to leave. But I went to a talk that in Toronto in 2023, Regavim, if you could believe, was allowed to come into Toronto. They're a settler advocacy organization, if you could put it that way. And they were talking in a synagogue, and I went there and I wrote about it. But I remember there was one lady in the crowd who basically this was shocking to me. She basically was suggesting something like, she asked the speaker a question like, why hasn't the Israeli government or Netanyahu, I can't remember exactly, but the leadership, why haven't they just taken Gaza or taken the West Bank? Sorry, the West Bank. Why haven't they just gone there and she was basically saying, why don't they just, you know, take it without anyone's
annex
proof?
it. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think it was like, to your point, like maybe in his warped view, Netanyahu's view, or the warped view of the leadership, they didn't have the right pretext. That's all that mattered. They just had to have some pretext or something to gain them favor to distract the public from what they're doing that's illegal. Yeah, because there's so many crimes that he's still not been tried for, on top of October 7th, and the corruption charges and things like that. So, yeah, no, that stands out because maybe that's what largely this is about. Like he is trying to he is trying to win over the public and take more for his greater Israeli project at the same time.
yeah,
This is not because it is so, it doesn't, how do I put this? It is obvious, it's glaringly disproportionate to anything that the resistance could. It's just gone so far beyond that. Like even Pierce Morgan, for example, like who you would never think that would change his thinking, has even now moved in a way that's more critical of Israel. So it's just, yeah, like you want to say that he or that Israel has I mean, they've ruined Gaza physically. They have destroyed Gaza. So what threat are they talking about now? Really, this is just a pretext to keep taking more to gain favor. There's no security risk. Not that there ever was one, but like it's so evident that there's no security risk to the safety of Israel. Like so, it's very plausible. This is, gaining him favor in the eyes of, the electorate there. But I I'm seeing though a lot, what's interesting, I'm seeing a lot of like dissent among Israelis. I'm not sure if they're anti-Zion. I have to be careful here, but you're
exactly,
seeing like,
exactly.
yeah, see, this is something I'm interested. There's a lot of dissent on the streets of this Tel Aviv right now, but I'm not really sure how many are anti-Zionist or liberal Zionists or where they fall. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, in fact, that's actually a perfect segue to this question, which is
Yeah.
now, have you been stunned or amazed how, despite the countless Jewish anti Zionist voices and movements, and despite Israeli historians, Israeli dissident journalists themselves, like Ilan Pappé, Avi Shalim, Mika Peled, Gideon Levy, Amira Haas, Shir Hever, and then academic scholars like Professor Noam Chomsky, you already mentioned Norman Finkelstein, and then voices who have huge
Yes.
followings like Katie Halper, Aaron
Yes.
Matte, Max Blumenthal, Dr. Gabor Matte, and Jeff Cohen, the founder of FAIR, that still one can be slandered as an anti Semite or this term self hating Jew, that people can still get away with doing that. And then you have Zionist voices saying, that any Jew who doesn't support Israel or an Israeli, that they're not patriotic, and that folks and that people who aren't even Jewish can get away with
Right.
calling who again can get away with calling people who are Israeli, who are Jewish, anti-Semitic, and that they can get away with that slander. I'm curious your thoughts to that.
Oh, yeah. No, let me say first, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about with respect to that is why there hasn't been much more discussion about what it means to be Jewish. Like we're very familiar with what I think, relatively speaking, especially since October 7th, what it means to be anti-Zionist. But especially also, I should mention, having interviewed Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, uh, thankfully with the help of Katie Helper, who nicely introduced me to him. Um, and he's so, but he is not only anti-Zionist, but he's coming from a Judaic perspective, a religious perspective. So I asked him recently, to your point, if he could recommend any books on the Jewish faith. Because I'm very interested, what does it actually say? What are the moral precepts of being a Jewish person? And he recommended this wonderful book. It's an ancient text, The Ethics of the Fathers. And really, I am just so blown away by it because, I mean, there's so many overlaps in this book between all the world faiths, between
Yeah,
Judaism and all. And I'm thinking, what does this, I mean, about honoring human life and being honest and not stealing and nourishing community? This is beautiful. What does this have anything? If this is what Judaism, if this is what it means to be a Jewish person, and this is what Rabbi Shapiro thinks it means, and also he told me following the Torah and the 600 laws and so forth, then what is this talk? Why are we even talking about when we're talking about Israel? Why are we talking? This is something I don't know how to answer really. Why are we talking about Judaism? What does this genocide, this state have anything at all to do with the Jewish faith? I fail to see it. It's something that is militaristic and colonial and
yeah,
supremacist. I mean, I really feel it'd be much fairer to call that what we're seeing in Israel a kind of violent, another form of violent white supremacy. That for sure, because these are Europeans who are doing the whole script again. They're coming and they're taking. But what, and I'm very confused by this. So I don't, I feel it's at this point, I feel that attack not only is slanderous, but it's incoherent. Doesn't make sense. And if you kind of push it to its logical conclusion, it actually says something very anti-Semitic. It's basically saying that to be a Jew means to oppress a Palestinian or to do violence against a. That's what it's saying, is that we have a right to do that, and you're not allowed to complain. That is essentially what you're saying, because these are all like the remarkable persons you mentioned. These are all people acting in good faith. They're basically saying, don't kill people. I mean, that's a very
yeah.
crude way, but don't murder people. And the objection is, yes, we're allowed to, and we will slander you for telling us otherwise. That is, and we will also do it in the name of Judaism. That to me really needs a lot more. I mean, that of course, what is happening in Gaza is of paramount importance. That's a priority. But I think moving forward, we really need to interrogate what does it mean to be a Jew. What does it mean to be a Jew? What does it mean to be an observant Jew? Because when I read these texts right now, and that's not the only text, there's Rabbi Shapiro's book, it doesn't add up. Like, this is not, that state is not, it's very insulting, actually.
Yeah,
If I'm,
you
yeah,
know, I actually wasn't expecting you to go to go that
yeah,
way because that's very interesting. Because I remember doing some research on. Yeah, I was doing some research on. Yes, I was doing some research on Judaism and so forth, and
right,
I was and I was very impressed that when I was doing this research on ChatGPT that it was telling me
right.
all these things in the Torah. It basically it was explained to me that if you just think that the Torah is the Old Testament, that's overly simplistic, and that Judaism, like Christianity, There are many books. There are many
Right.
sorts of faiths. There are many different sects of Christianity. You got Lutherans, you got evangelicals, you got Catholics, you got Protestants, you got Calvinists, you got Mormons, and stuff like that. And then the ChatGPT was explaining that's the same thing with Judaism. Judaism is not just
Yes.
the Old Testament. It's not even just the Torah. It's several volumes of books, and then it got into very then went down a very interesting rabbit hole with I Tik Tikunam Tikalam or something like that,
Yes.
which is very strong social justice stuff that comes from Judaism. So
Yes.
that I thought was quite interesting of itself because as an atheist and of course a lot of atheists we often tend to also oversimplify religion by saying that all of the religious texts and all of these books is nothing but
Right. Right.
genocide, bigotry, and all these things that normalizes the unthinkable. There is that, but there's also all these other stuff
Yes.
which inspires a lot of people to do social justice work, racial justice work, eco justice work, and so forth. So that's quite interesting what you were saying
Yes.
about what does it really mean to be a Jewish, and this is why it's so positive to see so many anti-Zionist Jews and them
Right.
themselves also making their voices more loud to say that Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. And I think I remember seeing one very inspiring protest where you had this Orthodox Orthodox rabbi from historic Palestine who was saying loud and clear that Judaism is not Zionism, Zionism is not Judaism, and we knew and we lived in peace with our Palestinian Muslims and Christians for years. So, anyways, so that was very
Yes.
interesting what you were saying. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, 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 no. It's really interesting. Like, yes, yes, because like a lot of the Zionist Jews who are religiously observant do talk about they're drawing from their faith. They are inspired by their faith to like if there's is it in Deuteronomy, the famous
yeah,
passage about pursuing justice, 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 you shall pursue, something like that. So these sort of things that come out is very interesting. And I've been thinking also about like maybe this is really about nationalism.
yeah,
I think about Heidegger's notion of thrownness. We enter the world or we're born into the world, we inherit certain biases, prejudices from our family, from our
yeah,
country. And that's what this is about. Like, you're living a life, just say you're living a life comfortable in Tel Aviv, and, you don't see in close or up close. I mean, that's different now with the live streaming of the genocide. You don't see for decades what's happening in the territories. You think you're a democracy, and you're also being taught to hate the other. Like this, I think is whatever we want to call it, that destabilize in their view, this being destabilized. Like we are good. Why would you resist us? Why would you attack us? Um, that whole destabilizing and revenge for that, it's like in Hegel, I think of Hegel too, because there's that, what he calls the master-slave dialectic. Like the
mm,
master, he demands that the slave like recognizes him. He's allowed to oppress him, but you must recognize me. It's almost like Israel is saying to the subjugated that we're going to punish you because you revolted, not only which is in your right, your legal rights internationally to resist. We're going to punish you for not allowing, it's so absurd, for not allowing us to continue to oppress you. Um, and whatever, because, you destabilized us, you made us nervous, and we're going to punish you for that. That is like almost something that defies categorization in a religious sense, whatever that is called, it's almost like it's a power dynamic that was threatened, so to speak, and they're punishing Palestinians for it. And that, given, unfortunately, the way that Zionism has evolved, if that's the right word, or
yeah,
has um, um, developed over the years, being so hateful and militaristic and violent, that is not so surprising. But what is surprising is that the rest of the world is allowing this. You
Mm.
know, you would think that the international order, rules-based order, would act as a check on this revenge because that's what it is. It's there's no that's what I hope people are seeing that there is absolutely, and it always was. I mean, even for the people who took longer to um, ally them, yeah, ally themselves with Palestinian people, that there was never any justice ever in Israelis' attacks. There was never any justice. This was not an exercise in self-defense or protecting the right. There was never any of that. It's always been in a spirit of revenge, and revenge is hate. You know, that's where it's coming from. There is nothing here to do with that, and the world is allowing this hateful response. So,
Although,
yeah,
although
yes,
great segue to
yes,
the
yes,
question,
yes,
then it's is this is I'm curious then your thoughts on uh
right,
recently the NDP, the leadership race has ended, and I'm very curious. We don't have to, we don't have to spend too much time on it because I have other
right, right.
important. But I'm just curious, very briefly, your thoughts on the exclusion of Eve Engler and Bianca Mugeni from the NDP leadership race. And despite that, do you still have some hope that the NDP in Canada can be the vehicle for Palestine justice and accountability on Israel, given Avi Lewis and many of the people who support
Right.
Avi tend to be critical of Israel and to various degrees support BDS. And judging from the debate that was moderated by CJPME, all of the candidates took a pretty good hard line on Israel and the U.S. and Canadian support in advocating Palestine justice. So I'm curious your thoughts.
Yes. No, thank you so much. No, I think, yeah, let me answer the first part. That is totally, I have no qualms about saying that's totally unacceptable. Just so hypocritical that Eves and Bianca were not allowed. And in the sense that if you are leftist, then you would welcome. You would not try and censor the sort of anti-imperialist platform that they were both advocating. And this is
Exactly.
what I find very hypocritical about the party. Like this really, and that's why I see the success of both their campaigns. Even though they were not allowed to win, they exposed that glaring contradiction. And so how do I feel now about the NDP holding Israel accountable? I'm not sure. Like, I know that there are good faith actors, but how far are they willing to go? Like, are they willing to sanction Israel? Are they like put hard sanctions on Israel for all this? How are they going to cooperate with the ICJ and the ICC? Like, what are they going to do materially? Like, because at this point, you know, condemnations are important, but they're not enough. So that is the thing I think people are really wondering about. Like, yes, there are some like actors here who are siding with Palestine, who are saying the right things, but are they going to back it up by like um, by hard action, concrete action? And the left is needed here. The left is needed because the left, like I mean, Yves and Bianca, that's why it's so disappointing. You know, you had this elite
They weren't
class
even
that was
allowed in the
saying,
race. That's the most
right,
scary
exactly.
part.
This is exactly, and they were basically that hope. I really think if they were like they were serious about cracking down on this, on doing what leftists are supposed to do. I mean, to oppose colonialism, imperialism, genocide, obviously, and to implement policies and actions that would ensure that, you know, not this kind of wavering, we'll see how it goes, or we'll just I mean, Carney, I remember there was a lot of support around him just honoring or recognizing the Palestinian state, but in a way, it doesn't cost him anything. You know, it doesn't cost them anything. We need to see, like, they um, uh, are, are, I'm not sure if they're capable because of this sort of,
Mm.
um, this reluctance to be firm in holding perpetrators like Israel like materially accountable. I don't know. I don't know like how far because yeah, certain things need to be done. Like we do have to sanction Israel. The Canadian government has to sanction Israel. It's not like a negotiable. Especially, I mean, you have to make it costly, as Issa Amro says. That's how you how you can resist is you have to make you would say before October 7th, you have to make the occupation costly. And this is what it needs to happen. These sorts of honoring of the state is not enough. So will the NDP do it? I don't know. Like it was not in terms of this, the support is there,
Yeah,
but like in terms of the policies, I'm not sure. And I think that's why Eves and Bianca were such a quote unquote threat because they were serious about doing the right thing. They were serious about, making doing what Canada or a party can to hold Israel accountable in like a very legal, material way. And that's not controversial in a way. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. That's
exactly.
the irony of this is that that is being called radical, but that's what you're supposed to do when, there's a genocide
Exactly.
happening. Yeah, yeah,
But then,
yeah.
that's a perfect segue to this question because you were talking
Yes.
earlier about how much the rules-based international order is. I mean, you didn't say it was a fraud or a joke, but you were being very critical of just how much Israel is exposing how all of that stuff is shallow and hollow. So I'm very curious your response to this question, which is, do you think China and Russia particularly could do so much more in their actions towards Israel? And do you find that the fact that both haven't engaged in full BDS and demanding a one-state solution, that this exposes the limitations that leftists and anti-imperialists have been saying that this is the dawn of a multipolar world coming. BRICS will save us. And, I'll just say the following. Now, Russia, I can understand why Russia doesn't really engage in so much BDS with Israel because there is a large Zionist population in Russia. There's a lots of Israelis who have dual nationality. But I find China has absolutely no excuse for why they've not
Yes.
engaged full on BDS with Israel. So I'm curious your response.
No, it's a really important, good question. Not being like an expert in Russia or China, I still think though it would be safe to say that the problem may have to do with these countries no differently than Canada, for example, are participating or members of this sort of neoliberal order. This is to your point on BRICS. Like that was something I've long been skeptical about is that yes, there will be a shift to the global south potentially, but if you are a neoliberal actor or state acting in a neoliberal capacity, you're going to put the bottom line first and you're going to relegate human life. And I think that is something that maybe is happening behind the scenes. Like again, there's the rhetoric, but it would be interesting to know. See, because I generally don't know like what economic relationships does Russia and China have with Israel that they fear would be compromised. But this is so sad because again, this is an order that like does not prioritize human life or doing what's right or just that thing, we were talking about right now, what should seem obvious, stopping a genocide. This is something, yeah, it's totally unacceptable. And I think this is the world that we are in. I think I learned a lot from John Mearsheimer
Mm.
because, him being a realist, I remember asking him in one of those interviews, like, is it not conceivable that somebody who's approached by APAC, for example, could act otherwise, say no. But he impressed on me that like when you're in that system, you want to win. So you're going to take that money. Well, he didn't actually put it in those words, but it's almost impossible to do because like what you're supposed to do in these systems. So I think like unless we are able, and I think that's why Eve's and Bianca's campaigns were so important. They were really committed to dismantling or playing a role in dismantling this greater neoliberal project that is, its tentacles run so deep and is international in expanse. Unless that somehow is dismantled and abolished, like I think we're still unfortunately going to see people across the spectrum or different countries still not doing what is morally and legally right. This is the thing that I think it speaks to. Um, and you see neoliberal, the way it affects people, you see it affect people in their interpersonal relationships. Everyone seems to have become over the last, few decades with the advent of neoliberalism, like very transactional, social bonds are eroded. Then there's austerity.
Yeah. Wow. 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 Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why, like, yeah, it's almost like that's why I remember asking Albanese, Francesca Albanese, that in a way I see Israel, and they're not the only ones, of course, they're almost like the West or neoliberalism writ large. Like they are doing what human beings do to one another on an interpersonal level with like the guns and the bombs and just to an extreme degree. That's why I think like this whole thing about anti-Semitism doesn't even eventually there's nothing to say about that because this is just the kind of evil that transpires under this is it's almost like neoliberalism is producing this. Like definitely it's Israel and Israel has to be held accountable. They are definitely like a discrete actor in this that you know they can't be left off the hook and said neoliberalism made them do. But like this system, the way that it just allows people and then to go set up shop, um, in countries overseas and exploit labor, and then, there be no impunity for that. I remember
Yeah.
like I'm seeing of less of it now, but it's still happening. Like I remember when I was getting into activism in my undergrad, like that was a big thing, you know, um, activism against sweatshops and unfair labor practices in the global south. Even now, it's sort of making a resurgence now. There's like people who are unionizing and people who are speaking out about like the conditions at Amazon, things like that. So like, but the fact that all of these things are allowed to happen and they're protected by the states, see, that's the thing that I find really unsettling. And maybe I was naive before, but a responsible government is supposed to be like sort of a moral check, a compass. Like you don't allow certain things to happen in your society because it's undermining human life or dignity. But instead, like these states, the US being an obvious example, they're just facilitating this. Like, keep doing it. We will support you. But it's a really good question. Like, I wish I knew more about Russia and China. I don't know, but I suspect it has something to do with power and economic relations that they don't want to jeopardize. And uh,
Well,
it's, yeah,
here's
yeah,
here's hoping the people of both countries do demand better from their do demand better from their governments, and could be one of those things. I remember I was watching my friend Pitta's docu series "True to the Powerless," and they were talking about Pierre Trudeau and his attitude towards South Africa, and Pitta was interviewing a, an academic who had done a book on Pierre Trudeau and his policy towards South Africa, Brian Mulroney's policy towards South Africa, and how it wasn't
yes,
as anti-apartheid as as people like to think it was. But apparently,
right.
Pierre Trudeau, she thought that the reason why he might have been just so lame on not confronting apartheid South Africa was because nobody else, at least in the Western world, was really doing much. So he thought, okay, so make
Yes,
those. But
it's
then,
really interesting.
yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, that's really interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Unfortunately, it's like they are thinking about, again, I think of Mearsheimer here, like, what do I do to maintain favorability, power to win? Like this is why, like, I feel in a way like it's good that we have these activists and scholars on the outside who refuse to enter politics because I feel we would lose them. We
Yeah,
would lose them because they're no different than anyone else in the sense that they would be compelled to act according to the rules of the system. So I think it's good that, like, you often hear, oh, so and so should run for mayor, so and so should run for but like in a way, and a lot of people they will be flattered by that, or they'll take a compliment, but they will say, oh no, I can't. But now I understand it more. Now that I see the way systems work, I understand why they're resisting more. Yeah.
but let me ask you this question: Is
Yes.
do you think that those of us who are concerned with Palestinian suffering and want, of course, to advance the justice of Palestinians, should we be engaging more with Christian communities and explain to people who are sincerely devout that they may not know this, but we are? eradicating the oldest Christian civilizations that are the various Palestinian Christian communities. Something which is so ironic given that Christian far right Zionist movement
Right.
and the ridiculous logic of the Christian evangelical
Yes.
movement. Uh, yeah, your response to that?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. I think yes, but I say this with an important proviso because I know people identities are so strong, in people's lives. And I think with like Christian communities, no differently from other religious communities, there is this tendency to, how do I put it, to relate more to those who you perceive to have your same identity.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm saying that almost like from a sociological anthropological point of view, because to me, like I think you were kind of alluding to it earlier, like, and I remember saying this before October 7th, like we don't uh, stop or we don't join in solidarity with Palestine because of. And that's kind of the thing that always confused me when people ask me, you're not Palestinian, what's going on? Like it's not a function of ethnicity or religion.
Yeah.
Like it's just the most fundamental human basis that we should be relating on. But I think, unfortunately, I think people, this is something I think maybe that is a harsh truth, is that they primarily see themselves in terms of, in this case, religion. And so if you can appeal to
Tribalistic,
them,
basic, yeah, basic
yes,
tribalism.
yes.
I
So I think, yeah, no, I think that, yes, like it's important. It's important. Not, I would rather see a world where people see past like these differences and they can relate universally to one another as human beings. But yes, there is that. If people become aware of what Israel's doing to Christian communities, I think, yes, you would see more support for Palestine. So it would be good. It would be a strategic move to gain solidarity and to pressure Israel. Um,
and have to ask you this question,
yes,
which
right.
is, have you been
Yeah,
surprised? Now, have you been well? Actually, well, before I ask you this
yeah.
question, have are you familiar with the Jeffrey Epstein human trafficking scandal, and have you read Whitney Webb's investigations into Epstein and read her two books about the system that
Yes.
produced Epstein by any chance?
Yeah. So is she the same journalist who did the exclusive that broke the story in the 2000s? It's the same one.
Yes.
Yes.
She wrote for a Minpress News for a period of time, and and she did a series for Minpress News, basically exposing what the Epstein human trafficking stuff was. That it was a sexual blackmail operation, and then exposed the very deep, dark networks of the U.S. deep state, the Israeli deep state, colluding, sometimes working against one another to do all of these heinous things. And then she went to Last American Vagabond, where she continued to do some follow up articles. Now she's the editor of her own website, Unlimited Hangouts, and she did even a 2 volume book on the whole Epstein thing and the evolution of it, called One Nation Under
Oh,
Blackmail.
oh wow. I got to check that out because I was looking at another book recently. I went back to like look at when the story first broke in the 2000s and things like that. And one thing, I mean, I was just, this was when I was doing my grad work. I had my head in the sand. I remember, so I wasn't following everything that was happening in the world, but I was shocked to learn, and this was only a few months ago, that he got a non-prosecutorial agreement or a non-prosecution agreement, sorry. And the fact that they knew all this, but they carried on with this prosecution agreement, yeah, it just speaks to the kind of impunity that people at that level not only have, but like they didn't even share with the victims that this is what they were going to do, and they didn't get a chance to respond. So again, it's like this attitude that certain life is disposable or trivial. So I'm really thinking a lot about that and how much that led to, and it's sort of slowly coming out now, led to crimes that we still don't even know about. Like how much did he, because he wasn't really held accountable in any substantive sense. So
Exactly.
how much did that embolden him to keep going?
Well,
And yeah,
what I find quite striking is is that if you read Whitney Webb's investigations into
Whitney
Epstein,
Webb,
it's very
right.
I mean it's very clear that Israel is heavily implicated. I think some people are focusing way too
Yes,
much on the Israeli angle because I think it strongly implicates the CIA, the British deep state, and Israel, and lots of these various entertainment, fashion institutions with links to the Israel lobby and so forth. But
right.
in fact, I'm actually quite surprised how much attention it's getting now, given that when Whitney Webb was part of Minpress News, which was already quite a popular anti-imperialist site, Manar Adley, is Palestinian American, the editor in chief, and yet it wasn't getting so much attention unless from some of these far right libertarian outlets.
Yes.
I remember trying to get other people interested in this, and I couldn't get anybody interested in this. And now
Oh,
there
wow.
is all this attention on
Yes.
on Epstein. I think people should be giving I think people should give Whitney Webb much more credit about it. But that aside,
Yes.
I'm quite surprised how much attention it's getting now. Are you surprised by how much attention it's only getting now?
Um, I wouldn't say surprised because I think it actually does link to Israel. What has happened, this genocide, I think, has really destabilized people to the point that they don't know the world they're living in. And
Mm,
they especially don't know how power operates. Because if it's almost like a slippery slope, where people are being forced to ask if this has, see, this is what I think there's going to be a massive domino effect. If this was allowed to have, this live stream genocide was allowed to have, what else is allowed? What else is happening behind this? If this would happen in full view of the world, what is happening behind the scenes? And so I think this is what we're seeing now with Epstein. People are taking interest in that because of this issue. But I think we're going to see like a not a resurgence necessarily, but just
a lot more public,
uh,
a lot more
yeah,
public scrutiny, and a lot more public
yes,
outcry,
of many
even
things.
even if all these people who should be in jail don't go to jail, but
Yeah,
reputations win
yes,
because of their
I
complicity with Epstein and whatnot.
absolutely, yeah, like it's going to produce a much more skeptical public that's going to ask more questions. I was just thinking about the way that publics have changed over the last decades, and we're at a point that is kind of scary. There's a good side and there's a bad side. The good side is that people are becoming more skeptical. They're asking more questions. They have resources and information at their fingertips that were unimaginable, like just say in the 80s, things like that, prior to the internet. But at the same time, I feel it's almost like a hornet's nest. Like we are seeing people in a mode of being that is just so chaotic because it's so much to handle. It's so upsetting. People are, I don't want to say losing their minds, but we're not sure like how do we channel all this indignation into something constructive that will actually dismantle? I want to say dismantle these structures because I know we're past that point. I think, I remember like in the 2000s, that was a thing that was good to say, like we're raising awareness and that would be like the end of it. But I think like that's not satisfying anymore. Like I think
Yeah,
people are very serious about, abolition and
yeah,
dismantling. And I think we are though at a state though where it really feels so chaotic that sometimes I feel I even have to kind of remove myself from uh, that universe because I generally don't know what to do. It's overwhelming.
yeah.
So I think that's what's happening with this interest in Epstein. Like he is just one node within the whole larger system of just people of a class of people that have been enjoying impunity. And it's also for me like really got me to think about whether, there's that old saying about power corrupting. Absolutely. Like, is that true? Is that true? Is that the necessary consequence for any single individual, or is it more of a function of power, or sorry, more of a function of systems we're in? Um, Yeah, that is something, and I tend to kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit naive, but I kind of lean towards thinking that, systems, combined with unbridled power produce people like this.
Yeah.
It's something about that. I'm not sure exactly why. I'm not sure exactly why that happens. Like why conceivably, like you can think of someone who attains power, political power, is operating within a neoliberal framework, but refuses to do evil things. But maybe that's not the way it happens, you know?
Yeah, no,
Maybe,
yeah, no, it's
yeah,
it's interesting, and but I think what's also quite disturbing is just I think I remember when when I had Elizabeth Voss Hindmarsh of
uh,
Consortium News and Minpress News on the program.
right.
We were talking about the Epstein scandal. We were talking about an article she did related to WikiLeaks exposing the Mark Dutroux scandal, which is a whole nother disgusting can of
Yes,
worms. And she was talking about this one scandal which got buried, which was the Finders Cult scandal, which was this cult that the CIA used uh, to traffic traffic little kids and so forth like that. And when she was telling me
right.
all these unspeakable horrors, I was sort of laughing nervously, going, "Geez, the CIA really takes evil to a whole nother level." And I think that's what the Epstein scandal is that like, wow,
Yes,
the CIA in Israel, they really want to go, they really will go through that length just to do what?
right.
Serve this settler colonial regime?
Yes,
It's just unbelievable.
absolutely. Yeah, no, it totally is. This is why I'm also thinking about like what is the role of educational institutions? I don't know if it's changed. I just remember classes, in grade school. Once I had to stand. They made me the senator. I had to stand in the class, or the senate. I was representative of like the upper house or something like that. There was an exercise. This was grade six. I'll never forget, like on how a legislation or how legislation is passed. It goes through the House of Con, then it goes to the senator for, it was all very predictable, all very clean. But now, like I'm thinking, they cannot be in good faith, knowing what we know now about the world. The teachers out there, I would really like to know the way they're teaching young people about the way that the world works, because we cannot tell them that that's how laws are made, that there's no lobbyists in the picture and stuff. These are all people in, you know what I mean? These are all people
Yeah,
acting in good
yeah.
faith who care about human beings. Like this is all falling apart now. So I'm thinking about like, what is the role then of the education institution? If they're teaching this is not, is it to prepare people to be part of this really rotten system, you know?
Well, I wasn't even going to bring this up, but I'll bring it up
Yes,
quickly. But I was watching the two. I was watching the two reports he did for TRT. The one about the student encampments at University of Toronto, correct?
right, right, right.
And another one where you were speaking with medical workers
Yes,
speaking out on the fact that Israel has been uh, deliberately targeting hospitals and whatnot like that.
yes,
And if anything, I'm not saying now the Gaza genocide is awful, but if there's any sort of good,
right.
one of those God is working in a mysterious way, is that it completely has discredited the Western liberal order.
Yes,
The fact that
yes,
the fact that so many journalists are being murdered. In fact, this is going down in history. What Israel's
yes,
doing in Gaza and other places, the most journalists being murdered
yes.
by a
Oh, for
state.
sure.
Most
Yes,
journalists being murdered by a state. Most journalists actually don't find themselves in harm's way or anything like that. Most journalists are if not in the comfortable setting that they are, they're
yes,
embedded with their governments and so forth like that.
yes,
So it's actually very rare that a journalist dies on the job or is even murdered
yes,
by by powerful institutions. Israel has been murdering journalists left, right, and center.
yes,
Israel has been murdering doctors, has been targeting ambulances and so forth. You would
yes,
think and of course Israel has been bombing
right,
universities, has been bombing daycare centers and so forth. You would
right.
think, even if you are a supporter of Israel, that there is something in you that would say, "Whoa, dude, time out." And yet, the response of Western medical institutions, of these, Western journalism, NGOs, nonprofits, has been nothing but silence. And even Reuters themselves, even when their own Palestinian comrades are being
Right.
murdered and maimed, they just continue to throw them under the bus and slander them. And I think that's been just
Yes.
quite stomach churning and quite, blood boiling seeing that.
Absolutely. It reminds me, when I first got to Istanbul, I had a coffee with a dear friend, colleague, Dr. Al Adian. He is a professor there. And he told me something that still, it really resonates with me. It's still with me. And that something to the effect that the Western mind, this was before October 7th, the Western mind cannot conceive of Israel as being this criminal state,
Mm,
um, capable of the atrocities that it actually commits. And I think there is something to that in terms of how we've been conditioned for so long. Because, there's still so many people that need or haven't uh, let go of that image.
yeah,
They're still holding on to, they're not in full solidarity with the Palestinian people or solidarity at all. And it's almost as if they're trying to save whatever image there is left there. And it's, is it being done for money? Is there racism there? Is there Islamophobia? Is there a sense that the West needs to remain and Israel being sort of the kind of representative of the West in the Middle East remain like the exemplar of liberal values, and so it can't, fully throw it under the bus. It's
yeah,
totally absurd. But what I think I'm seeing is exactly what he said because of just how long it was framed. It's almost like we're coming out of a bad dream.
yeah,
And it's just how long it was framed as like an exemplary democracy that could be the leader of the Middle East, but they're surrounded by enemies. I mean, this was not just the Zionist narrative. This was the Western narrative. This is why I think even post 9/11, I remember the literature or just the articles that were coming out of the liberal media on how bad, you know, Islam is for women and all these memoirs coming out by women, about how they found liberation in the West. Like this was very this was really drilled into people. And I think people are there's a certain segment of people, including journalists, that they would prefer to remain in a stable state than have to reckon with really what Israel is. This is, I think, very disturbing because it says that people will not just comfort, but they'll choose falsehood if it somehow keeps their career going, if it gives them sort of a coherent view of the universe, people will do it. Unfortunately, people will do it. It's even when it reaches this extreme.
well
So
that's well that well that that's a perfect segue into this question.
yes,
and
yes,
and it's a big one, which is
yeah,
false. Now,
yeah,
I am a strong advocate, as many are, for the democratic, secular, one-state solution.
yes,
It is really the only game in town, and however much people want to delude themselves about the two-state delusion, that is really all it is. It's a delusion.
right,
However, given Israel is continuing to behave as the rogue state it is, lighting the region of West Asia on fire, and given the immense intergenerational trauma Israel has unleashed on top of the multiple one Palestinians and others have already experienced, the hatred that it's going to produce, with some unable to even forgive Israel, is the democratic
yes.
secular one state solution really plausible? Or only if the international community demands that when they do engage with BDS, because the most outspoken Jewish anti-Zionists and a lot of people within Israel, those who do have a conscience, say that there is no changing Israel from within. It's only through a global BDS movement that we can advance the democratic secular one-state solution. I'm curious your response.
Yes, yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a hard one because I always think whenever I hear that question, I feel like the prerogative there is the Palestinian people. It's their right to self-determination. So basically, what I'm saying is that it's really what they want collectively. So I just want to say that because I don't for a second want to speak for them or seem like I'm
Yeah,
speaking for them. But at the same time, like everything you're saying is so true. And I just can't see Israel in its current form, in the state apparatus in its current form, how how this can continue, how the state can continue. Like it has to be, and this is something that I think really needs to be distinguished because we're talking about a state apparatus versus a people. We're talking about dismantling the state apparatus. I think that that seems to be the only plausible thing is this one state solution because the two-state solution, as I think, was it Gideon Levy spoke about
yeah,
it as something as buying time. That's really what it's been. It's just been this discussion about buying time because that's what that was a big, as I said earlier, that was a big wake up call to me in 2021. Was to me is like that's what they're doing. Canada is also part of this problem. They're buying time with this rhetoric around the two-state solution. They're not doing anything. They are funding Ukraine, or sorry, they're funding Ukraine, but they're not funding people who are
yeah.
under relentless
Palestinian resistance.
oppression.
Yeah,
Yeah, not a single bull. I know it sounds like absurd to like a mainstream audience, but like not a bullet, not a gun to the resistance, not nothing, zero. Um, yet, as you might recall, like they were also encouraging. I remember there were some politicians who were kind of encouraging people to go up and sign up for Ukraine, not to dismiss anything that's happening in Ukraine, but it
yeah.
just like double standard was glaring. But I just want to say that, like, I think, yeah, your suggestion or the one state solution seems to be right now the most plausible because this state has become a monster.
Yeah.
How is it going? How it's almost inconceivable that it's going to come to us. We're far beyond that point. I think there was maybe some hope, maybe among some actors, international community actors, politicians, and so forth, states that Israel would somehow come to its senses.
Yeah.
But I think that is just it's a far gone. It's
Well,
far gone.
even and and and
Yeah.
and even if one is still deluded in the in the two-state solution, or the two-state delusion as I call it. Okay, even
Right.
if one
Yes.
still believes in that,
Right.
is okay, okay, I mean, first of all, Israel has been building illegal settlements in the West Bank, even
Right.
when they were shaking hands with Yasser Arafat and saying, "We're going to give you guys Palestinian nationhood in the West Bank and in Gaza." And
Right.
Israel was continuing to put illegal settlements. You mentioned Gideon Livy. He was talking about
Yes.
he was talking on the Real News Network about Yitzhak Rabin's legacy, and he was saying that he would meet Yitzhak Rabin and confront him, saying, "Okay, you're talking about a two-state solution, and yet you're not removing any illegal settlements in the West Bank and in Gaza or even East Jerusalem." And Rabin just didn't even have an answer for him. And
Right.
and then the other problem is the Palestinians have been dispossessed. They do have a right to return that large diaspora of people. The one state solution deals with that because I mean, in theory, it's Israelis and the indigenous Palestinians living side by side. All of those, and again, all of those people who lost their homes in what's now Tel
Right.
Aviv and so forth should be allowed to return. The
Right.
democratic secular one state solution deals with that.
Yes.
And then when we go back to how the two-state solution is implausible, even the liberal Zionist parties that claim they want a two-state solution. This could be Labor, this could be the Blue and White Party, or this could be Yair Lapid's party. Every time
Mhm.
a journalist, whether they're international or even one from
Right.
Haaretz, every time they say to them, okay, you say you're for a two-state solution, so that means you're going to remove all those illegal settlements in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and the response is always, "Oh no, 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 we're not going to remove the illegal settlements
Right.
there. We're going to keep them there."
Yes, no, no, exactly. It doesn't no, it doesn't it's preposterous. And in fact, like they're accelerating the expansion right now. That has been something they've been, they use the coverage of Gaza for a long time.
Yeah,
Israel, they used the coverage of mainstream coverage of what was happening in Gaza to start that, and to now they're accelerating it. Um, but yeah, no, there's something you mentioned I want to speak to directly about. Yeah, there's the right to
the
return.
right of return.
There's
Yeah,
so, yes, there's so many, there's so much that is pre-October
yeah.
2023. Like there's so much that was already there. I remember saying this to my colleague that there's so much there. There was the open air prison. There was some, but where am I going with this? I'm trying to remember my train of thought. Something about, yeah, there's, uh,
About how we've kicked the can down, about how we've completely overlooked all of these other issues when we even talk about a two-state
right.
solution, like the right of return and so forth.
Yes, no, this is exactly like it's, oh, yes, okay. So I think it's clear that no, it's abundantly clear. I think the intentions were there on the part of Israel for so long that they are not serious about a two-state solution. They're not serious about a one-state solution. They want to take it's what, some scholars have noted, like the difference between South Africa and
Mm,
Palestine has been that not that this for a second is right. They relied on the black population for exploitative labor, whereas
yes,
Israel is, what do they call it? They call them rejectionists. They want Palestinians out. And that's what part of the project. That's why I feel like something, Israel, this state that is animating this, it has to be stopped. So, what is the solution to that? It has to be some entirely different system
yeah,
where Israel's not calling the shots anymore, and that self-determination on the part of the Palestinian people, that they actually are not disadvantaged. See, that's the thing with all, with Camp David and all these Oslo, they were constantly being disadvantaged, but the media was kind of always, I don't know how they'll do that now, but they were always trying to like show it as like diplomatic and fair and we're moving forward, but really it was always disadvantaging the Palestinian people. So that is something I feel that won't be achieved unless there is this continued solidarity work, internationally, resistance by the Palestinian people. And yeah, because I think, like, yeah, to your point, the two-state solution as a possibility when Israel, especially, is acting like this, when they're doing everything in the opposite direction. They're taking the land that there be, that would be the Palestinians' land, for
yeah.
example, in the two-state solution. Like, why? Why are we talking about it? And if we are talking about it, like, what is the function here really in 2026? It sounds, I mean, because I think I remember decades ago, it sounds like if you don't know like the historical, the material reality of Palestine, like it sounds like just with anything in life, it's a negotiation that, would honor both sides and people can finally live in peace. But it's very naive,
Yeah.
knowing this particular, every situation is different. Sometimes maybe something like a two-state solution or a two-sided thing in another context could work. But in this, it's clear that there's no interest,
But then,
on yeah,
but then I think this is what will happen if the international community actually stepped its if the international community actually engaged in full on BDS with Israel and so
right,
forth. And I think this is probably what will happen. I think if Israel refuses the one state solution, the democratic secular one state solution, and rejects all Palestinians the right of return and them relinquishing their state being an ethnocracy, I think we could see Israelis behave the way the French settler colonialists in Algeria, the Pied Noir, and others of North Africa behaved, which is basically flee.
Yes.
You move out of the country, or like the Great White Flight in the USA. So the White Flight
Ah,
in the USA was when uh, when there was desegregation in the South and parts of the North and so forth.
right.
A lot of black, working, a lot of middle class black folks and working class black folks would, would move into these largely white neighborhoods, and the communities just went away. They literally just flee,
Yes.
moved to
Yes.
suburbs and so forth, and let these black communities, well, not not flourish, but that's basically what they did, and I think that's what's going to happen if the international community demands one state solution and engages in BDS with Israel to achieve it. I think, uh, you know, we'll see how Israel will respond, but I have a suspicious feeling that I think the the Israelis who do believe in Zionism, I think all of them will just flee out of historic Palestine. Some will move back to whatever part of Eastern Europe, whatever part of America, Australia, New Zealand, wherever they came from, or start anew in some other country.
Yes.
I personally think I personally think that's what's going to happen. Very curious your thought on that, as as someone who's covered Israel Palestine for years as a journalist. Oh, wait, one moment.
Yeah. So yeah, it
Oh,
froze a bit. Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's
okay,
okay.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah. No, no,
your
no.
thought.
It's no, no. It's an excellent point. It's a really disturbing reality that I think you're speaking to. And I think, it's very plausible because it's not just the territorial control, it's also the hatred that exists. And I
Yeah,
think, that the numbers bear that out. There was that famous survey that came out after October, but this was happening October 2023 about the amount of support within Israeli society for this genocide. And so, yes, so if you were to like break down the walls that divide, figuratively and literally, the break down the walls between Palestinians and Israelis, you could very well see something like this white flight because they're resourced. A lot of Israelis are resourced, and so they would not want to live in the same area, so they'll take their resources and leave. And it's really upsetting, because I was not, again, like I'm by no means an expert, but I remember it was shocking to me when I spoke to Miko Peled for the Palestine Chronicle
mm,
that in Israel they name streets after vicious, like colonists who like have massacred and killed Palestinians. And to me, they're actually proud. They're proud of this. I mean, I was not aware, like, I thought, like, this is again, I was naive. I didn't realize, like, I thought that there was this kind of false benevolence. Oh, no, I thought, but it's not there. It's not even there. This is how shameless the hatred is. It's like, no, we like Palestinian people. We just want to live in our own sort of way. But it's not even that. It's like there's such animus and racism towards the Palestinian people that's just like nothing I've seen in my own lifetime. That I think what you're saying is very plausible because they don't, they see themselves as like superior
yeah,
and the civilized ones. And they feel like it's almost like they're going to be, if I could use that word, like as you hear in a lot of racist discourse, this idea we will be somehow polluted or tainted
yeah,
if we live together. There is this purist mentality. And I think that's it. It's so upsetting and sad because it's so unnecessary. This is the thing that, like, this is the big tragedy of all this is that it's so unnecessary that this had to happen at all. These in another universe could have been human beings living together. It's all starts with ideology and hatred. Like these are all myths in a way that is generating this hatred and this desire to overtake, the region. Like it all starts with like just toxic thinking. Like it's so unnecessary. Like who's better off for it in the end?
yeah.
Really
No, I mean,
nobody. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I went to I visited Australia a few years ago
Yes.
to see my friends Robert and Selena Egginson, who are featured in John Pilger's documentary Utopia, the last
Okay.
documentary he did on his home country of Australia and the censored
Ah, okay.
there. So I went. And when I went to visit Robert, Selena, Marika, and the family, it was just when Australia had this referendum on not not amazing referendum, but basically the referendum was a constitutional change to the Australian Constitution, which would acknowledge that Australia, is on stolen lands of the Aboriginal
Right.
people, that they are the original custodians of this land, and there would be this voice in Parliament, so a special voice in Parliament that would sort of be a bridge between the Aboriginal community and white Australians, so forth like that. And it was
Right.
defeated. It was defeated in a popular referendum by the majority
Oh,
of
wow.
Australians. Very sad. A majority of Aboriginal people. There were some Aboriginal people for left wing reasons and anti colonial reasons didn't support the Yes campaign, but a majority of Aboriginal people did support it. Robert and Selena and their family voted, voted yes. And when the defeats came, I think I had come the week of when that happened, and I remember talking to
Yeah.
Robert. I was saying, so your response, and he was saying the following. He was saying that it's bad enough that I knew, and he was saying it's bad enough that I once thought that most white people were racist in this
Yeah.
country. But the fact
Right.
that apparently the demographics was that a majority of Chinese Australians voted no, the
Mm.
majority of Indian Australians voted no. And he says that now I look at all Australians and I think that all of them are racist now.
Ah, yes.
So
Yes. It's,
the hatred is so there, and Australia, just like the U.S., like for a lot of the immigrants population, it's like how do you fit in? How do you become white? You bully the black people, you bully the indigenous people, and I think it's the exact same thing in Australia. So going
yes.
back to what you were saying about Israel, yes, the hatred is so ingrained in the system. I mean, look, I had Israeli friends. I am not in touch with most of them because most of them are supporters of Likud, and one is so
Mm.
one is so far right that he thinks that Benjamin Netanyahu is too soft on the Palestinians. So
Oh, wow. Wow. See, this is yeah, it's shocking. This is a terrible side. I mean, it's a kind of toxic identity politics,
yeah,
like I remember in Istanbul, I was at a function and I was kind of shocked by there was a woman I met who was Palestinian, but she lived in Israel. She lived on the other side of the Green Line. She had always lived there, and she was in Istanbul doing a postdoc or something like that. And I was shocked by how she wasn't more incensed. This was during the genocide. And in her view, like yeah, it was very much, I remember this kind of very liberal, we have to kind of, but there's a genocide. And I just remember her talking about her childhood to me, her experience. It was all very favorable. See, she grew up in that context thinking maybe that that's a thing. There's that saying, who feels it knows it. And I think that really comes down to it. People's identities are formed around like their, yes, their education, the indoctrination, but also around or based on their environment. And so I think a lot of people just have this false consciousness that they're better than the other or someone who is like them, but not quite like them because they grew up in the occupied territories because of just these major gaps in their thinking and their awareness. And then it gets exploited further with the way that mythology and just toxic belief systems are weaponized. And in a way, it's all, see, that's the thing that's really sad and upsetting about it. It's also, there's superstition in all this. It has no material basis. this idea of like we're more pure just because, yeah, because a lot of people, that's where it stops. We just are this, and that means we're better. Like that is how simplistic it is. And that is a very bad side of humanity. It's almost like you see this with like nationalisms too,
Yeah,
that, like we are better just because,
yeah.
it stops there. It just,
I always,
yeah,
I always find it that that's the most that's the most darkly amusing thing about
right,
when it comes to the when it comes to the far right, you think of Brexit. You had the
right,
far left and the far right working together for this Brexit vote, which was basically
right.
F the EU immigrants and immigrants in general. The
Yes,
MAGA people, the MAGA people. What unites a poor, exploited, white, working class person with some rich schmuck is this hatred for the other. That's white supremacy.
yes,
And then
yes,
you get this with Japan. You get this to a degree with Turkey, and I think that's well, India
yeah,
with its with the Hindutva movement, and that's
yes,
and that's Israeli society in a nutshell because you have the Ashkenazis who look down on the Sephardics, and then they look down
right, yes. There's also
Jews
this.
from West Asian backgrounds, and then there's even some marginalization that Eastern European Jews and
Yes,
Russian Jews experience. But what unites all of them? Hatred for the Palestinians,
yes,
fighting
yes, yes. This is
Lebanon,
it.
Iran, and Syria, and Iraq, and the
Yes,
and on fire. So
right. Yes, no, it's like I think that's how Trump, they said, won his first election. He exploited that kind of hatred. And at the same time, he's someone who was not interested in helping the white working class at all, but he knew that they had that hatred, and so he would use it to win. And that's the thing is that like the reality, just to kind of be Marxist maybe for a second, is
yeah,
that the reality is that these peoples around the world who are hating each other quite often, if they are in the same class, do have much, much more in common than the person who's telling them to hate. That's what
exactly.
I think Fred Hampton's genius was. He understood that without minimizing racism or hatred at all.
Yeah,
But he understood that we have to move through this hatred. We have to move through it. But we can look at this in a very material way and say that we actually have much more in common than the people dividing us are trying to tell us. And yeah, because people are just it's frightening to me the way that people take a pride in something that is just so ephemeral and based on like just ideal, like it's not it's not an accomplishment, it's just an idea.
that's a much more polite way of saying a version of what George
Yeah,
Carlin said, which is
yes,
why would you be proud of the Irish? Why would you be proud of something which
yeah,
is
yeah,
a
yes, yes,
genetic
exactly.
accident?
You didn't even do anything. It's like well, you didn't even, it's not an like it's so bizarre. I know it's really. Yes, yes. No, no, it's exactly. I think that's what it is. I think, unfortunately, I'm seeing this too among like people who are coming out. I did not know this about them, but they are Zionist or pro-Israeli. Like, it's almost like what I'm feeling. What this is about is them wanting you to like them, or they're getting upset with you not liking them, or the people or the state that you take exception to rightfully right now because they're committing atrocities. It's almost like about them more than it is about, yeah, very narcissistic than it is about what is happening in Gaza. Like, there's so many layers to this. There's so many layers to this. Yeah,
But
like
here's
it's, yeah,
here's hoping. Well, we only have one chance at this because we only
right.
have one life, and I think that the movement for Palestine solidarity has to be demanding the democratic, secular, one-state solution. And when it comes
Yes,
to BDS, that has to be the demand on the BDS. It can't just be BDS, stop the genocide. BDS, stop being mean towards
right.
Palestinians. It's no, it has to be a democratic, secular, one state solution.
Yes,
And here's hoping when that happens that Israel will prove me wrong and just accept that But if they do, go the way of the of the Pied Noir or the White Flight, well, at
Yeah.
least Palestine will
Yes.
be free. But I will say something very, very
Right.
dark though about
Oh, yes. Absolutely. And it really goes to show how I feel. I think about this a lot that when we're talking about liberation or coexistence, like I know this is an age-old debate that class is not enough because you would think, conceivably, at least, like, say the Israelis who were poor or working class um, decided or could see that they actually have more in common with Palestinians than they have with their like rich or more wealthy Israeli counterparts. You would think there would be promise there, but the hatred, this is something that I really think about. The hatred is so strong that even like class solidarity might not be strong enough in certain
yeah,
circumstances. It's um, I hope that in most cases that's not the case, but I remember before October 7th, a lot of people, and I think Saeed has mentioned this too, like you cannot really understand fully, maybe partially, but not fully, what's happening in Palestine from a Marxist perspective. Like you have
oh
to look at, these hatreds to the racism and the Islamophobia and all this. And this has really brought that all into relief, has made that very obvious. Like I was not, again, I think keep on thinking of that example with Miko Paled because I was shocked by the hatred that existed in Israeli society in 2000. That would have been 2000, before I left for Istanbul, 2023, 2022.
yeah.
Um, and, but yeah, so it still exists. It's not simply about class or classism. There's real
No,
hatred
no, I
still that exists.
it's gonna take it's gonna take a long process radically decolonizing the mind of Israel. I mean, look,
Right.
look at Australia, look at the U.S., and even look at I mean, even look at Canada. I mean, like, even though Canada
Yes.
is much better when it comes to acknowledging the plight of indigenous people and admitting wrongs were bad stuff was done in the past. Canada is much more advanced compared to where the US is at. New Zealand is
Yeah.
much more advanced compared to where the US, Australia, and Canada are at put together,
Hmm.
even though there are still a lot of problems. And then, the Nordic countries barely acknowledge, past wrongs to the Sami people, and then
Mm.
Romophobia is still, is an
Right.
acceptable form of bigotry. But I think,
Right.
but honestly, John Pilger once said that he thought his country of Australia has the most colonial mindset. Nobody has a
Yes.
more colonial mindset than Israel. I mean, that is going to
Yes.
take a
Yes.
while. It's
Yes.
going to take a process.
Yes. Yes.
It's going to take a process, and we'll see if it works. If we can get the democratic secular one state solution to be advanced, but
Well, yeah, no, no, definitely. That's a thing that's, I don't know, like, it would be interesting to take a survey. Like, what shocks me about Israel, this is before October, too, is that the hatred is shameless, almost like they
yeah,
wear it as a badge of honor. It reminds me of Jabotinsky, trying to, like, turn violence against the Palestinian people into a virtue without apology. Like, that's the thing, like, Uh, not to say that, Canada is necessarily an exemplary society, but like I just grew up thinking that, because also Trudeau's multicultural mandate in the schools, and one thing I took away from that, among other things, is that it's a very bad thing to be, bigoted,
yeah,
prejudiced. Like that's a very shameful thing. If you have that issue, you need to deal with it and
yeah,
privately, like you don't go around broadcasting that or you deal with it, in the ways that you should, like through solidarity work. But it's the inverse in Israel. It's the inverse. It's like, no, no. And you see it here. You see it here, like what's happening in Toronto, at Bathurst and Shepherd, the filth and hatred that has come from some of the demonstrators or the rally attendees, as I think they're called, from the Zion side, is just staggering. And it's getting no media attention. It's absolutely staggering, some of the filth that's come there, because there's no shame. Like they think they're in the right by saying this somehow. So yeah, no, your point is really well taken. Your point is really well taken. Like it's a next level.
Well, and we
Yeah,
still, and well, we gotta keep calm and still
yeah,
carry on then.
yes, yes, definitely, definitely.
Well, before
Yes,
we end the show, Paul, now
yeah.
because this is your first time on the show, it's time to do the questionnaire that was done by Marcel Proust, later perfected by the late popular French broadcaster Bernard Pivot, and later my hero, the
Okay.
late great James Lipton of Inside the Actors Studio. Paul, it's your turn to do this before I let you enjoy the weekend. Firstly, what is your favorite words?
Oh, my favorite word?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Favorite word? Maybe, I don't know. Compassion is the first one that comes to mind. Compassion.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yes, yes.
Then what is
Yeah.
your least favorite word?
Um, you know, even though we use it, there's something charged about it. Just the word hate. Really, it just
Okay,
hate.
interesting.
It's just it's always hard for me to even say that just because it just speaks to a terrible side of humanity. Yeah,
Funny. That's my father's least favorite word,
interesting.
And Jesus Rodriguez of Orinoco Tribune, a very popular guest on the show.
Oh,
That's also his least favorite word is the word hate.
oh wow. Yes, yes. Yeah, that's why
Then
like even in public. Yeah.
then what sound or noise do you love?
Oh, sorry. Could you say the
What sound or noise do you love?
oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. But I
Uh,
didn't
what
hear.
what what uh what sound or noise do you
Oh,
love?
sound or noise. Oh, sound or noise. Um, I like, wow, sound or noise. I like, um, for some reason, I find it kind of soothing, when you can hear the refrigerator. When you can hear the
Okay,
refrigerator
interesting.
humming, at
Yeah,
least in the old, I don't know if the new ones don't have that, but the old refrigerators, which I still have, they start humming and it kind of just soothes me for some reason.
interesting.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Then what sound or noise do you dislike?
Wow. Like for some reason, and I'm not sure why they do, those really like loud mufflers that people put on their cars and
Yeah,
they explode. They just want to make a point.
yeah.
Those are so jarring. Those are so like they're so abrupt. They're so jarring. So probably yeah, that actually I'm thinking about that because it happened yesterday. It was so loud. Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
what is your favorite curse word? And since you are based in Canada, if you have a French curse word, feel free. And since you lived in
Yes.
Turkey, if you have a Turkish curse word,
A
feel
curse word. Oh man. I like in Jamaica you hear fuckery, like
fuckery.
fuckery,
Yes.
yeah, fuckery, because it just can mean so much. It can mean nonsense or ridiculousness or lies. It's got so many things you can use it for. And
Okay.
it's not like it's usually used to like talk about things or it's yeah, usually not leveled as an attack against someone. So like I like that too. Like you could talk about fuckery.
All right. Interesting.
Yes. Yes.
Then then what turns you on? What inspires you emotionally, spiritually, or psychologically?
Honestly, man, it's to be honest, man, I really mean it. Like persons like yourself, like uh, people who are passionate about justice. Really, that
Okay. Yeah.
really keeps me going. Like that is the greatest reward to be around people who are passionate about justice, because we're in a world where I think people are depleted. They're so depleted, they don't
Yeah.
have the energy to do this all the time, and so makes you feel less alone when you're in the presence of people who are passionate of
Well,
that. It really goes a long way.
completely agree with you on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Then what turns you off then?
Um, I think the indifference or
Difference,
no,
empathy.
or I should say
Yeah.
apathy, because indifference can be a result of defeatism or being feeling defeated, but apathy. I think because apathy in the form that I'm thinking of it now is really kind of a dismissing of people, like, oh, that's not going to do anything. What they're doing is, and I really feel that's kind of, I don't know, it's really,
Yeah,
it's almost like there's an element of egoism there. It's like, I know what you guys don't know. Without really,
true,
yeah,
true, true, true,
yeah. So
true,
that's
very
that's
true.
kind of unattractive. Yeah,
Then,
yeah.
what profession, if you weren't doing the brilliant journalism you do, what profession would you love to do?
Oh man, I think I would like to, to do something.
Well, don't you do arts and
So,
poetry and
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I wish I could, if I could make a living in doing it. I think, doing my reggae DJing, reggae dancehall DJing, or being involved in artist development. Um, reggae dancehall emerging artists. That's what I do on my Instagram, just as a labor of love, if I can call it that. That I've never figured out. I'm by no means like I have not a bone in that in my body like entrepreneurial, so I don't
yeah,
know how to monetize. But if I was able to, I would. Yeah, I would do that. If I got
okay.
to. I guess sort of DJ, maybe coach of
Uh,
music. Yeah, yeah,
my friend Sally would love if you do reggae dancehall. So
yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, definitely, for
big
sure.
big lover of all things Jamaica and the Caribbean.
Yes,
So,
for sure.
and then, what profession would you absolutely not want to do under any circumstances?
I think like it's no disrespect to anyone who is really, but I know this because I've asked myself this, but I would never want to ever be a police officer enforcing laws that like
Yeah,
I mean, again, I don't mean to disrespect any individual out there,
yeah.
but like it's just what you're required to do, enforce the laws like that.
And then, final
So,
question. Oh, wait, one moment. Oh, sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. Uh oh.
oh, sorry. I think it froze
Yeah,
maybe, or is it freezing?
yeah. Uh oh. 1 second. Uh oh. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on. Can you still hear me, Paul?
Um,
Come on.
oh,
Uh,
no problem.
okay. 1 sec. 1 sec. Come on, internet. Come on, internet. We have one. We have one last question. So
Oh,
don't dial me now, internet. Okay.
oh, okay. Yes, sure. Yes. No, 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 no.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay.
Yes.
So actually, Paul. Can you repeat very quickly what you were saying about the police? Why you would not want to do that profession?
Oh, yeah. The police. No, I just personally couldn't do it. Like, even if it's, I don't know, 20% of the time, I just wouldn't be able to enforce laws that are morally objectionable. And just say, I know some people have the capacity to do this to say, as part of my work, or I just would never be, personally, I would never be able to do it.
All righty.
So
Then final question.
yes.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say as you arrive at the pearly gates, or whatever is your vision of the afterlife? And even if you're an atheist, please do answer this question.
Oh, wow. I think maybe welcome, and you will now have peace of mind because I feel that that's the hardest thing to have in human life. Peace of mind. I almost wish I had that, or no, I do wish more for that than happiness, if that makes sense, just to have peace of mind, but it's impossible really in a way, and I feel that that would be a nice way to like enjoy paradise. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well,
Yes.
we were joined on this epic edition
Yeah.
of One Plus One, our All Things Israel Historic Palestine edition with Paul Salvatori of TRT. I will put a link to a bunch of interviews, documentaries, and more that Paul has done for TRT and is also past journalism with Palestine Chronicle that he mentioned. Paul,
Yeah.
thanks so much for
Oh
taking
no,
the
thank
time
you
of your
so
busy day to
much.
come. I hope that this will be the
Uh,
first of many conversations we have both on and
yes.
air.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. It was such an honor. You're such a great interviewer, just so engaging to be here on top of everything else.
Yes, and again, keep up with the great work you do,
Yes, yes,
and of course, solidarity to the people of Palestine,
yes.
and I have the yeah, got my thing.
Ah, nice. Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful scarf. Yes,
Yes,
that's
Viva
wonderful.
Palestina crushes Zionism. So
Yes, that's beautiful.
and
Wonderful.
uh,
Yes,
and then also before we and then also
yes.
before we close, we want to send our deepest condolences to Rania Masri. Her relatives lost their home in Israel's bombing of Lebanon, and Rania Khalek, who has been on the show before, she has lost a relative who
Oh
has been
no.
murdered by the Israelis and what they're doing in Lebanon. So our deepest condolences to them, and we hope that Rania will continue to be safe. We hope Julia Chassem will continue to be safe. We hope Dr. Mara Osman of Press TV will also be all right. And our hearts and prayers with all of the people of Lebanon, historic Palestine, Iran,
Yes,
Syria, and elsewhere. And power to the people, death to Western imperialism and Zionism. Good
yes,
night and good luck. And
yes.
Paul, once again,
Thank
thank you
you
so
so much. Thank you so much, Yuri. We'll talk soon. Take care.